At a time the nation is going through so much economic hardships, there has to be a sense of urgency to solve this problem. Actually, it is the government who is in power that has to find solutions for these economic problems. We can, of course, comment, we can criticize, we can give our observations, but eventually it's the government which has to come up with a plan how they are going to overcome this situation. Now, if you really look at what the government has been doing for the last several months, I have a problem. But the whole strategy seems to revolve around an IMF loan. From the time we defaulted our debts in May 2022, we have been talking about obtaining a loan from IMF. Now, government is proudly claiming that it has reached a staff level agreement with IMF. They talk as if all the problems are going to be solved with this arrangement. But is it the case? Not so, because this IMF staff level agreement has conditions. The first condition is that for them to lend money to Sri Lanka, the Sri Lanka's current lenders have to agree with Sri Lanka on a debt restructuring plan. So what is the guarantee that these lenders will agree for this? Some of them have already gone to courts. So we have no guarantee that all of them will agree to that. Even in the best scenario, if they agree for a debt restructuring plan, the IMF loan is going to be only 2.9 billion US dollars. That is also to be released over a period of 4 years. Some people must be thinking that the money is going to come immediately. It is not so. 2.9 billion is to be released over a period of 4 years. At a time, our current default alone is more than $4 billion. This year alone, we have defaulted more than 4 billion US dollars of debt. Now, what's the situation next year and the year after and the year after? Every year for the next several years, Sri Lanka has to settle more than 5 billion US dollars of debts. So you can understand, by having or by receiving only 2.9 billion US dollars from IMF over a period of 4 years is not going to solve your problem. So obviously government is counting on this IMF loan to use it as a basis for obtaining further loans from the other countries and other institutes. So that must be the plan. That seems to be the plan. But is it going to solve your problem? How much borrowings are we going to continue? We are already in a debt crisis. Our current debt level is more than US dollar 50 billion, of which more than 11 billion US dollars are short-term loans, which we have obtained at very high interest rates, which has to be settled within 5 years or maximum 10 years time. So when we are going through this crisis because of a debt situation, should we look at further borrowings as the solutions? No, it is not so. We have to find ways as to how we are going to increase our foreign reserves. How can we increase our foreign income? Look at the requirement. I told you that we have to settle at least 5 billion US dollars of debts every year from next year onwards, on top of what we have already defaulted. We also have a balance of payment deficit, about 5 billion US dollars as at now, because our tourism revenue has come down from about 4.5 billion in 2018 to less than 500 million now. Our foreign remittances have come down from about 7 billion US dollars 2 years ago to perhaps 3.5 billion this year. So no foreign investment seems to be coming. So we have more than 5 billion balance payment deficit this year for sure. And that's going to be the case next year as well, unless we find a solution. So this balance of payment deficit of 5 billion plus the debt that you already defaulted, you have a gap of about 10 billion, which is the real balance of payment deficit. So we have to have a solution to bridge this gap. The only way you can do that is by increasing your revenue and also decreasing or at least controlling your expenses. Now, do you hear a proper plan for this from the government? Do we hear anything from the government as to how it's going to increase its foreign income? by about 10 billion over the next 4 to 5 years' time. We don't hear that. That is the problem that I'm having right now. I think the government has got its priorities mixed up. It's depending on borrowings because that is what they're used to. When I say they, the people who used to borrow heavily and put us in this situation. Who are these people? Firstly, Mahinda Rajapaksa government from 2010 up to 2015 borrowed heavily for infrastructure development, which did not generate revenue, though we just spent money on them. The commercial borrowing started during that period. US dollars 5 billion was borrowed as commercial loans, short-term loans which has to be settled within 5 years' time. And then the next government, Yahapalana government, did worst because they borrowed more than 12 billion US dollars as short-term loans and at very high interest rates like 7%, 8%. And today we have more than 11 billion of those debts still remaining to be settled. And mind you, 6.9 billion out of that 11 billion was borrowed during 2018-2019 period. So the very people who borrowed like that and put us in this crisis are now there at the helm trying to solve the problem. So can we expect something different from them? Their strategies have failed in the past. So what is the guarantee that the strategies will work in the future?